Tularemia is a bacterial disease, also known as rabbit fever or lawnmower disease. The symptoms are flu-like with fever, chills, and malaise, and this usually shows up 2 to 5 days post-infection. There are 4 different types of tularemia. The ulceroglandular form shows clinically as a necrotic lesion that ulcerates at the site of the tick bite or the deerfly bite. The second type is oculoglandular, which causes conjunctivitis that is purulent. So there's the eyes get infected, so they start oozing pus and get really weepy. The third type is typhoidal, which is similar to typhoid fever. And the final type is pneumonic, similar to plague, as it affects the pulmonary part of the body. Tularemia is a disease of wild mammals. These are mainly squirrels, muskrats, beaver, deer, and rabbits. They're transmitted directly by contact with infected animals or from a bite of a vector, such as ticks or deer flies. It can also be transmitted through ingestion of contaminated food or water, and also inhalation of aerosols that carry the bacteria. It is present in North America, and reports of tularemia have come in sporadically in Canada and also the United States. There is a link that I've put at the bottom of this slide, and that is about an outbreak of pneumonic tularemia that occurred in Martha's Vineyard in northeastern United States. And you can click on the link if you would like to read the paper. Very, very interesting because the outbreak involved several individuals that had been mowing their lawn, and the exposure was through dust and also aerosols that were generated from these individuals mowing over dead animals, dead rodents, and they had no idea actually that they were exposed till they started getting this disease. Tularemia is a nationally notifiable disease, and as I mentioned before on the last slide, there have been sporadic cases reported over the past decade. There really haven't been that many cases, and the incidence rate is very low, less than 0.1 case per 100,000 population. In terms of case numbers, there have only been 4 to 13 cases reported annually in Canada, and in Ontario, only 6 cases have been reported over an entire 10-year period. In 2015, a confirmed case was reported to Sudbury Health Unit. There's only been one tularemia advisory in the past. This involved a Manitoba pet distributor whose dwarf and regular hamsters tested positive for tularemia. In the same shipment with the hamsters were also other small rodents. This affected several provinces, BC, Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba, as well as northwestern Ontario. The advisory stated that healthcare providers should be consulted if any illness was encountered within 14 days of contact with sick or dead hamsters. The bacteria that causes tularemia is called Francisella tularensis. It's a gram-negative bacteria, and it's a small facultative cocobacilli. It's very difficult to grow, it's fastidious, and it requires sulfhydryl compounds to grow well. So most of the time, the diagnosis of tularemia is carried out using serology. Tularemia can be treated with antibiotics. It is best to remove ticks promptly to prevent further transmission of the pathogen. Some of the antibiotics, the more common ones that are given are very effective, but there have been reports of relapses occurring with a few of these antibiotics. There are some preventative measures that can be taken by high-risk groups such as wildlife rescue workers and hunters. They should handle wild mammals with gloves and eye protection. Laboratory workers as well, if they're culturing the bacteria, should be handling the cultures in a biosafety cabinet and be using level 2 containment. Landscapers who are using lawnmowers or weed whackers should check the area for dead wildlife before they start mowing, and they should also wear a protective mask. Insect repellents should also be used. There is a live attenuated vaccine, but only for lab workers and those who have to be in contact with infected animals. It's not for the general public. There are also other tick-borne diseases that can be transmitted to humans. Below is a list of them. I'll just go through them quickly. I've mentioned some of them already in previous slides, especially with the vector ticks. The first one is human granulocytic anaplasmosis. It's a bacterial disease caused by a rickettsial-type bacteria. The next on the list is human babesiosis. It's very similar to malaria. It's a protozoan parasitic disease and generally affects cattle. And the etiological agent is Babesia microti. And we may or may not cover it in the AP complex in a week, depending on how much time we take on malaria. The third disease is Powassan encephalitis, and I've mentioned it before as well in an earlier slide. This disease was named after a child who died from encephalitis in Powassan in Ontario, and the Powassan virus is the etiological agent for this disease. Other tick-borne diseases include tick-borne relapsing fever, a bacterial disease caused by a relative of the Lyme disease bacteria, a different species of the Borrelia spirochete. The next two diseases on the list are both rickettsial diseases, which I've described on earlier slides, so I won't go through them again. The very last disease on the list is tick paralysis. It's an ascending paralysis that starts with the legs, progresses upwards to the rest of the body. It is not caused by a pathogen, but a tick saliva toxin. It's a very rare disease that resolves very quickly once the tick is removed.